What do you want from an aggressive front tyre? Lots of grip, consistency and a smooth edge-to-edge feel? Who would have guessed? Now, when it comes to providing solutions for problems in mountain biking, sometimes the designs are both rich and varied. However, when it comes to the problem of designing a front tyre tread, it seems a lot of brands are coming to a similar conclusion. So what does that solution look like? Well, you've got an open tread that lets mud purge through, all whilst giving good bite, but not so open that it begins to feel vague or washes on roots and rocks. You've got an alternating centre tread pattern, probably going 3-2-3-2, that gives a really big braking paddle on the back of that edge of the 3, but not so much of an emphasis on braking that it begins to feel slow. You're probably going to want to offset the centre and outside knobs so there's no direct route for an impact to go straight to the rim. Plus, between that 3 and the 2, the 3 lets you use those outer centre knobs to be a really nice, consistent transfer knob between the middle and the edges. Then you want the knobs to obviously be soft, but not so soft they begin to feel like they deform and flex under high load. You want it to be light, but not so light that it punctures, so there are going to need to be different casing options. And when you're designing a tyre, you need to know that whatever you do, you're not going to please everyone. Over the past 10 years of mountain bike tread design history, there have been 3 distinct periods. Firstly, there was the age of the Minion DHF, which inspired some flattery, or dare we say imitation, from other brands. Then there was the time of the Magic Mary, which left racers reaching for their paint pens irrespective of what tyre brand actually sponsored them. Then there was what was that final one? It's on the tip of my tongue. Can't quite get the name. The name escapes me, but if I recall correctly, it was used around by about 50% of people surveyed at Whistler Mountain Bike on the open day in 2023. Ah! Of course, it's the Maxxis Assegai, and it's a name that often crops up in tyre reviews, irrespective of whether the tyre is being reviewed or not. But it begs the question, are all of these tyres just copycats of one another? And if so, which is the feline frontrunner? Well, to understand that, we devised a very simple test. What we wanted then is for the person that was riding the bike to have no idea what tyre they were actually on. And for that, we needed a very technologically advanced piece of equipment that took hours of design, years of expertise, and I knew I was up to the challenge. "2D again!" And I developed this. Now, the cynics amongst you might think this is the product of spending a lunch break online finding the longest mudguard possible, ordering 2 of them, chopping one in half, and cable tying them together, but it was a degree more complicated than that. The other thing we need is, of course, a tester, and I'll be calling on the help of Pinkbike's very own Matt Beer to help me sort out the Assegais from the nasty guys. Either way, he's a lovely fella. Now, let's get us to the test track. So first of all, what kind of track are we dealing with?
Mostly single track, pretty twisty, low, not very well supported berms. There's a couple roots and round rocks poking out of there too.
It's also a bit wet today. It's also quite cold.
Yeah.
Do you think temperature has an effect on the rubber tyres that we run?
I think so, yeah. There are a number of them that are dense to begin with, like say that Michelin. It's probably like the firmest, tackiest rubber, and then some of them are more compliant and squishy feeling. So I think they're maybe drawing closer to that dense feeling altogether.
Yes, so true. Now, what we're doing is, Matt's kind of run all these tyres before, so we've got your optimised pressure of what you'd actually want to run. I mean, we could say, oh, we're going to run 23 PSI across all the board, but then something that has a very compliant casing could feel very different to something with a firmer casing, when in reality, we think it's better to be really transparent with what pressures you feel is a good baseline, and then you can kind of make it up for yourselves. We have, on the front of this bike, got a work of art. This mudguard, I mean, it literally took me hours, weeks. The CAD profiles, the engineering, it's all there. What we're doing is, you're kind of staying in front of the car, I'm wheeling the bike to you, you're receiving the bike, and you're only staying in line with it, which is really important. We've also painted the sidewalls. Hand on heart, can you see when you're riding what the tread is looking like?
No, definitely not. definitely trying to keep my head like upright when I'm going climbing up to the top. So I don't want to cheat it. I want to like, yeah, see for myself or feel for myself what the difference is here.
One thing we are doing though is that each tire has been given a number, which I'm informing you what
Before
number
I set off.
before you set off. One, that helps with organising GoPro shots,
Yeah.
but also just so you can help build a profile of what you think each tire.
Yeah.
Instead of it
reflect
feeling
on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's get you on a different wheel,
Cool.
different tire, and go out for another run.
A little sliding. Rubber is a little waxier feeling maybe. Not bouncy though. Felt the whole tire kind of roll over. Continue gripping. Felt like all the tread was on the ground, not just the shoulder knot. Good hold. Good bite. But it's not the most compliant. Pretty stiff. The casing doesn't bend with the knob. Doesn't feel quite as tacky. Pretty compliant, but a little slippery. Pretty compliant. Pretty good lean over. Oh, a little slide again.
Okay, so Matt, many laps to be had.
Yeah.
We've got a little itinerary we're going to tick through. So first of all, we're going to do some quick fire observations about each number, you not knowing what they are. Then we're going to talk about your overall preferences and takeaways, whether there was a standout or whether it's more about groupings of tyres feeling similar or different. And then we're going to go to revealing what number is what. So starting with tyre number 1,
Right.
what are your observations there?
Okay, I'm going to look back at the
Oh yeah, we've got
observations.
lots of notes, it's quite complicated.
Yeah. The order was mixed up and we didn't know which tire was what. So tire number 1, I said it was very smooth rolling. The rubber was maybe a little bit waxier feeling, didn't have that like tack to it, and maybe had a sharper edge or sharper breakaway.
Okay, and tyre number 2.
Tire number 2, good transfer, could be a bit compliant depending on what I was hitting, and that one was one of the more difficult ones to differentiate, so it kind of depended on what I was denoting first.
Tyre number 3.
Tire number 3. Lots of grip when leaned over, possibly the best rubber, and yeah, that was, good transfer.
And by best rubber, just to help the viewer understand, do you mean grippiest, do you mean predictable, or a combination of sort of everything?
Yeah, a combination of everything. It felt like it was gripping in terms of braking, wasn't like understeering or anything, and then I could push it, and the compound and the casing, that combination of grip felt the most comfortable or predictable.
So number 4.
Number 4, let's see. Number 4, I said had good damping, good edge hold, and a good transfer to that edge. A grippy rubber, and then I kind of left it at that.
Number 5.
Number 5. Also, like one of the other ones, I said the rubber felt a little bit slipperier. The breakaway when it was on edge was a little bit sooner. And it also felt like it had the biggest volume, so it was like the cushiest, springiest.
Okay. Do you think, now the reason we did a disrupted order instead of just rolling through 1 to 5 was I didn't want them to be, say tyre 3 was really bad and then tyre 4 would, by comparison, always feel the best.
Yeah.
So I wanted it to be quite disruptive. Did you find there were leaps and bounds and differences between these tyres?
Yeah, I mean, between the 5 tires, there were maybe 1 or 2 that were at either end in terms of like the damping being pretty extreme or not at all. And then same with the rubber being like the most grippy or having the earliest breakaway or slide happening.
Now, when we talk about the word damping or a damped feel, a lot of people at home will be thinking that's a word we're feeling familiar with in terms of a fork.
Yeah.
What do we mean when a tyre's damped? Because they might be thinking of oil and circuitry.
Yeah.
But there's a real difference, or at least a perceived difference, between pumping your tyre harder and having a more damped tire.
Yeah.
What do you mean by damped?
Damped, I would say, like if you ever like drop a basketball, it's not totally inflated. It just kind of smushes onto the ground there. That's kind of what these tires that are well damped feel like, but they also don't have any bounce or roll to them. So they have that soft, squishy feeling, but also supportive.
I think it's one of those things as well, a more damped feeling tire, it feels, maybe like it glances off things less, but also on the rebounding stroke, they kind of combine into each other.
Yep.
And you get something that's maybe sort of, if it goes over damped and gets almost quite wooden, you don't want that either. But it's not something that feels like it prangs and prings off stuff and it kind of thuds along the ground.
Yeah, there's definitely a balance there. Like you said, too slow and it can feel like it's not reacting or catching up after each hit, and then too fast and it just feels springy and loose. Right,
okay, so let's get in to how it shook out. Was there a bottom ranked tire?
I think I would put number 5. I mean, it depends what we're talking about here too, because the comfort on some tires was better than others, but then the grip was less.
Okay.
So I would say overall, tire number 5. These were also really close. I was surprised. I thought they were going to stand apart a little bit further, but tire number 5, I'd probably put at the bottom, number 5.
Okay, and as we go up through, is it there a group, or is it, can you tick them off one by one? I mean, we're asking you to separate things that are incredibly fine.
Yeah.
And this is something I thought was a really good takeaway, kind of hearing your small observations as we were recording, is that so much so in tires, we tend to have this idea of that's the good brand that makes the good tire. Mm-hmm. That is the good model XYZ. But actually, I almost find it quite encouraging that it's so hard to pick apart these tires.
Yeah.
And maybe as a community, as a group, we've kind of been underserved by the placebo effect. And it might be actually undermining a lot of, you get to a shop on holiday and they don't have the tire of your choice. Mm-hmm. And you worry about it, understandably so, because you've been told XYZ is best.
Yeah.
And this test, it makes it feel a bit tighter.
Yeah.
And definitely. I like that.
Definitely.
So anyway, as you go on to 4.
Yep. Number 4, I would say, was tire number 1.
Okay.
So 5, number 1, number 2, number 4, and tire number 3 was at the top.
And so you mentioned tire number 3 earlier on, feeling like it had a bit, well, in your own words, talking about it feeling like it had a bit more grip, I think you said the word predictability maybe.
Yeah.
What made it better than the other tires? And was it better by a large gap, or was it quite fine again?
I think it was quite fine. There was maybe 2 other tires that felt similar to this, but out in those cold conditions, you kind of have this like slippery, hard packed, but also grippy, granular dirt. And when that breaks apart, it offers quite a bit of grip. So you want something that digs in, but then on that slippery surface, that's where it was more packed. That's where you really notice these tires. And I would say those were the most controlled, where they offered grip through that loose stuff, and then they also caught on the hard pack. And going back and forth across those cambers as you're turning, changing direction, that's where that tire really stood out.
Okay, so it feels like there's a tight-knit group in the middle, between 2 to 4.
Yeah.
But 5 and 1 were maybe picked out.
Yeah.
What do you think your 5th ranked tire was? I've got my notes here as well.
I think it was the Kenda. It had the most noticeable volume. Like it almost felt like not a fat bike tire, but between the other 4, it was the most distinguishable for that reason. And also the rubber was really good. I was surprised it was that close in those conditions, but there were a couple instances on that sheeny hard pack stuff where it broke away a little sooner.
And then your top ranked tire, number 3.
Yeah.
What do you think that was?
I think that's the Assegai.
Do you?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What makes you say that? Because the Assegai, let's face it, is sort of the tire that not only inspired the others, but also inspired this video. The idea of this copycat tire that everyone wants to get in on.
Yeah.
Why do you think that number 3 was the Assegai?
I think I'm able to differentiate what that rubber feels like. The Continental has a very distinct rubber feel, and the Michelin has a pretty distinct shoulder, knob angle to it that feels very square, and it's very stiff casing, whereas the Maxxis is a really good blend of everything there.
Okay.
And that's where that tire really shines, really stands out. But I could be wrong.
Well, this shows that my hours of slaving away on that mudguard have worked.
Yeah?
Which is great.
Yeah.
I'm very happy with this. So, tire number 1
Yeah.
was the Conti.
Yeah.
Tire number 2 was the Assegai. Tire number 3 was the Schwalbe. Tire number 4 was the Kenda. And tire number 5 was the Michelin.
Okay. Some of that makes sense.
Dude, I want to say, I think being able to pick these apart is something that I think it's interesting when you test bikes, because everyone will feel the effects of having more grip, but being able to pick apart why things are gripping different.
Yeah.
You will notice the benefit, but getting right to the root cause is really impressive. And some of your feedback today has been so bam on the nose, which has been super cool. And thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
Are you shocked by anyone in particular of the reveal?
I think the Kenda surprised me a little bit. Yeah. Now thinking back to it though, like that and the Michelin have a very square feeling to them, and I can see how the volume of the Kenda was mistaken for the damping feeling of the Michelin. So yeah, between those two, I'm not too worried. And I definitely could pick out the Conti. Those box fresh tires, I feel like they need a little bit of a break-in, and they have a little bit more sheen to them almost.
It's funny, the Conti was actually the one tire that our paint pens wouldn't take to.
Oh yeah.
It was like beading off. And I thought, this is probably really good for how you store a tire.
Yeah.
Because, keeps them sort of moist and stops them drying out. But I thought, is a scrubbed set perhaps better than a brand new set?
Well, I actually asked some racers that if they used a box fresh set of tires for a race run, or if they put something that had been previously run on for a race run. And I got mixed answers there, but I do notice that there is a good amount of time where they have to break in, like maybe a day of riding or whatever. And after that, they really start to come alive and work. And it's a tire I love.
So we spoke earlier on about servicing the needs of a damped feel as well as support through pressure. That Schwalbe radial casing has, I think, 5 psi higher than the Michelin. They seem to have gone into slightly different avenues. The Michelin going for quite a weighty carcass, but very damped, then run at a lower pressure. It almost feels like a run flat tire in some ways.
For sure.
The Schwalbe has gone a different way. You actually sort of, thought it could be the Assegai.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel that high pressure in a negative aspect? Did it feel like it was notably higher than the rest?
No, definitely not. It does, maybe the overall lean angle of where you can get the Assegai might have been mistaken for how that tire holds, and like the whole tread seems to roll on the rim as opposed to the tire folding over, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Kind of moves as one unit, and that's where maybe I thought it was the actual lug of the Assegai catching the edge.
Interesting. Well, it's also funny because with that radial casing, they've actually made that tread for the radial casing. And so in some ways it'd be interesting to see how other brands respond to that, and whether we see another slight, maybe an evolution of this Assegai style tread.
Yeah.
So that's it from us. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks for riding endless laps in the freezing cold.
Thank you for swapping all those tires and wheels.
Dude, I think we might have to come back in summer. So we're really interested to see how heat plays a factor and whether it's going to replicate the same results. Now get in the comments to let us know whether you saw your favourite tyre on the list and whether its ranking is something that you relate to. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.